Hey, Jason Seiden here. Look, I don't know if it's the world we live in and the economy these days, or what, but so far this year, I've gotten more questions about personal branding and my use of video in mine than I have, I think, in all of 2022. I thought, look, kind of in one way or another, I've been helping people with this for 14 years. And so maybe let's take some of these videos, at least this year, and go behind the scenes. And I'll talk about what it takes to put these videos together. Because the good news is anyone could do what I'm doing. And given that this is the first one, I thought I would start at the beginning. What comes first? Content and context. That's a 1-2 punch. And I will tell you that I think one of the biggest hurdles to getting going with stuff like this is that people just think about content and they don't think about context. So yes, obviously you could get started, you could run, like there's no substitute for action, and you should. It's really not as scary as you think it might be. What if I look like an idiot? Come on, who's watching? You know, like by the end of the year, I racked up about 250,000 views on these videos. I'm not advertising them. I wasn't trying to build an audience. I was just creating these for me, and that's a number. I didn't really look at the numbers week over week. I just am posting these. So, 2023, yeah, maybe this will be a little different. Maybe now I'll do a little research into the audience. Maybe I'll refine my messages and start dialing into the audience a little bit more. But when I got started, that's when I had the fewest people watching. That was the safest time to take a risk. And if you have been watching, in the middle of the summer, I tried a second form of content. It was a bust. I killed it. No one's coming for you. If you start something and it's not working, you can abandon it. Trust me, the folks who are going to watch your stuff out of the gate, they're the very folks who will forgive you first if it's a miss. So action, absolutely. But when you go to take that action and you think to yourself, all right, what am I going to talk about? Certainly, what do you want to say? What's the topic? Some people do research. For me, these videos are for me, so I wrote a list. It was about 80 items long of all the lessons I've learned and the advice I've gotten that's good and the situations I've been in that are kind of comical and things that I wonder about that I think might be interesting to others. I wrote it all down, and I wrote, I started writing out blurbs for some of them. Because I thought the context was also important. I'd see a story that I maybe would want to share, and it's one thing to know, I want to tell this story from my first job when I was the executive producer of RollingStone.com. It's another story. It's another thing entirely to know how I want to tell that story. Am I telling it to be funny? Am I a hero? Am I the victim? Am I the villain? Am I just an observer? Did I learn something from it? Am I entertaining people with it? Am I drawing a lesson from it? Am I working through it? Am I drawing a comparison to something? Like, knowing how you want to tell it, knowing the context of that story, that's a separate thing entirely from just knowing the content. And I'll hit a pause here. This is not just about video. Back in the day when I helped people with their LinkedIn profiles, LinkedIn is a brand new thing, and most of it looks like a resume, and right at the top you had your photo and then your title and then your summary. And this was new to a lot of people. So not surprisingly, they all struggled. And the question I would get is, what photo do I use? Because that's, we're all vain. And my answer was always, it's not a question of what photo you should use, because I'm sure you've got a lot of good photos. It's what's the right photo. So let's take the new content and let's break it down. Let's figure out the context. What's the story you're trying to tell? Let's write your summary. Let's simplify your summary. Let's break it into what do you do and what makes you unique and how does working at your particular company distinguish you from others, and then let's share something personal. And if you can write that out, the right photo will become easier to pick. With the videos, it's the same thing. What I figured out early was I don't have a lot of time week over week. I don't want to do a lot of research. I'm old enough that I've got some life experience worth sharing. So I thought, you know what? I want to use these videos for myself. I want to share things that I'm actually working through or things that I'm thinking about to help me work through stuff. And when I did that, suddenly the context became a little bit easier to determine. These are man in the office kinds of moments. I'm not going to do a lot of retakes. They're not going to be particularly polished. I still haven't put title cards on them. The content's going to come from a place of wonder. These are not expertise videos. I mean, I have expertise. Sometimes it gets shared, but some of these are just like, look, this is what I'm dealing with. I really don't have an answer this week, or it's an opinion, and it's one of, I don't know, 8 billion, you know. So that was important for me to figure out. So I wrote this list of 79 topics, and I realized I don't want to just go through them week over week. That felt like work. So instead, I thought, these are recurring themes. These are things that I'm thinking about all the time. There's other stuff that's not on this list. I'm just going to take these weeks one at a time. Every weekend, I'll kind of do a retrospective. What things did I work through? What kinds of topics was I thinking about? And then come Monday or Tuesday, I'll cut the video and then I'll post them on Tuesday. And by doing it that way, it also ensures that they're short and sweet, because these are work days. I don't have a lot of time to devote to it. But creating that context is what helped me make it simple enough and safe enough to take a step. Where if somebody said, I didn't like your content, you're not an expert, you're sharing stuff that's not work, you're whatever, I could say, yeah, you're right. This is what I'm doing. This is my goal. Great. Don't watch them. You know, and that's it. There's a lot more to talk about, but at the end of the day, it's actually really simple. You got to take an action. You have to make the world safe enough that you feel safe taking the action. And we all know that content, you're going to share content. For me, safety comes through defining the context for the content you want to share. That's all I got. Love you. See you next week.